Sup, peeps? Zelda, am I right?
Zelda. I like Zelda, and since you're watching this, I think you also probably like Zelda. So, the other day I was wondering, what Nintendo console can you play the most Zelda games on? Well, that's what I'm here to find out, so let's lay down the ground rules. Each Zelda game can only appear on a console once. For example, the Wii can play both the Wii version of Twilight Princess and the GameCube version. But since that's the exact same game, just flipped, I will only count Twilight Princess once. But if there's a bigger difference... Oh, glasses are not broken, that's good. Fuck, dude. Where was I? But if there are bigger differences between releases like Twilight Princess HD and Twilight Princess on Wii, I will count each as a separate game. Oh, and also, we will be considering games released on consoles that you can no longer buy because their shops have been taken down, like the Wii U and the 3DS, as if their stores are still up, because I think that makes for a more interesting video. So with all that out of the way, let us begin. First up, the NES, origin of the Zelda franchise, and it only has 2 games on it, Zelda 1 and Zelda 2. No spin-offs or anything, just 2 really good games that have definitely aged a little poorly in some places, but as a start, that's fine. And with only 2 games, the NES is in first place because it's first in our list. So the OG Game Boy has a few Zelda games that released on it. First, of course, is Link's Awakening, a fan favorite, and it's quite good. Not my personal favorite, though. I much prefer Link to the Past, but it's definitely a great game. Now, on the other hand, we also have Link's Awakening DX, which is an enhanced remake of Link's Awakening, with new content, including an entirely new color-based dungeon, because it was on the Game Boy Color, but it also was one of the Game Boy Color games that could be played on both the Game Boy Color and the original Game Boy. So that means it goes on this list, giving the Game Boy 2 games as well. So currently it is tied with the NES, the Super Nintendo Entertainment System, or the SNES. What a console. It has Link to the Past, which is a fantastic game, and also the Nintendo Scintillaview games. I would say this thing is unknown, but if you're at all into Nintendo gaming as a niche, then you've definitely heard about this before, but I'll explain it for those who have a life, or are watching this video just because they want to play Zelda games. So the Scintillaview was basically cloud streaming before cloud streaming was a thing. It was an attachment for the Japanese SNES, the Super Famicom, and it essentially allowed the Super Famicom to download and play games that were broadcast to it. It can also do things like browse magazines and other media, whatever gets beamed onto the cartridge that had like a save slot. It's a confusing thing. Maybe it deserves its own video. But on this platform, we got a bunch of Kirby minigames and a bunch of other stuff. But what we want to talk about is the 2 Zelda games for the system. BS Zelda no Densetsu, or BS The Legend of Zelda. The game is kinda a remake, kind of a spin-off of the first Zelda game. I haven't played this one, so I don't know that much about it, and since it was a Scintillaview game, it was never released on cartridge ever, so you can't play it in any official means, but you could find fan-made reproduction carts online. This game did get another map, BS The Legend of Zelda Map 2, which is cool, but I'm not going to count it as its own game, because it's just another map of the same game. BS Zelda no Densetsu Inishi no Saikiban, or The Legend of Zelda The Ancient Stone Tablets. A pseudo-sequel to A Link to the Past, and I also haven't played this one, but I do have one of those fan-made reproduction cartridges I was talking about, and it's cool. Again, I haven't played it yet, but I'm working on it. So those are the games that you can natively kind of play off of Super Nintendo cartridge. Again, the Scintillaview games are weird and you can't officially play them at all anymore, but I thought they were worth mentioning. Now, there are some more games we could play on the Super Nintendo. The Super Nintendo got an adapter released for it called the Super Game Boy, and now you can pop a Game Boy game in there, and you can now play Game Boy games on the TV. Both Link's Awakening and Link's Awakening DX work on this attachment, meaning that we could take the 3 games, add the 2 Game Boy games, giving the Super Nintendo a somewhat meaty library of 5 games, over double what the NES had. So far, the SNES is in the lead, but is still a little lackluster simply because you can't play Zelda 1 or 2, but having Link's Awakening DX and Link to the Past, two great heavy hitters, is good. So the next console we're going to take a look at is the Game Boy Color. Now I do count this as a separate handheld to the Game Boy because of the amount of just pure Game Boy Color games that released for it that you could not play on the original Game Boy. And in this case, we have two games, The Legend of Zelda Oracle of Ages and The Legend of Zelda Oracle of Seasons. Two of the most underrated Zelda games in my opinion. I love both of these games to death, and I definitely prefer them to Link's Awakening personally. But these are the only two Zelda games playable that were made specifically for the Game Boy Color, which sucks. But you can play both Game Boy games on Game Boy Color. And some of them, like the original Link's Awakening, are programmed with some color added. Which is something I forgot to mention about the Super Game Boy. They had, like, slight color. It was pretty much just everything as one solid thing. It's not that impressive, but it's cool! With all that, it means that the Game Boy Color has 4 playable Zelda games, putting it above the NES and Game Boy, but still one below the SNES. The N64, Nintendo's big jump to 3D, home to some of my favorite games of all time. Mario 64, Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask, Star Wars Episode 1 Racer, I guess. I don't have that many memories with this console outside of Mario 64 and Ocarina of Time. I played Yoshi's Story and Star Wars Episode 1 Racer a ton and have a lot of nostalgia for those games, but this isn't a video about the N64. If you want me to make a console retrospective or something like that, let me know. But anyways, this game is home to only 2 Zelda games, but they are 2 of the best. Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask. I don't need to introduce you to these 2 games. You've no doubt played them both, and they're both great. Some might say legendary landmark adventure game titles, but that's it for this console. There was an adapter that let you play Game Boy games on N64 called the Transfer Pack, and it only worked for about 20 titles worldwide, and mostly just unlocked bonus content, like playing as your character from the Game Boy Color Mario sports games on the N64 games, and it let you put your Pokemon from the Game Boy games into Pokemon Stadium, and play the Pokemon Game Boy games on TV, but no Zelda games at all, which is a shame. Well, that was a bit disappointing. The N64 is still stuck down at the bottom with the Game Boy and NES. But our next console is about to blow the competition out of the water. The Game Boy Advance, home to Metroid Fusion and Metroid Zero Mission, 2 of my favorite games of all time. Oh, and some Zelda games too, I guess. The Game Boy Advance is home to a really beefy library of Zelda games, starting off with The Minish Cap, a fantastic 2D Zelda game and a fan favorite to many. It's one of the Zelda games I've played the least, but definitely one I like a lot. This is the only straight-up original Zelda on the handheld, and that is kind of a shame, but alongside it, a re-release of A Link to the Past, plus a whole new multiplayer Zelda game, Zelda 4 Swords, based on the 4 Swords mechanic from Minish Cap. Now, I can hear the argument that this doesn't really count as its own game, but I personally consider this cartridge, with both Link to the Past and 4 Swords on it, to be 2 games on 1 cart. But if you don't count 4 Swords as a full game, there will be an asterisk next to this on the final count. So, all it means is you can subtract 1 from that total number, and then you'll get that list without the game that you might not consider a full Zelda game. But I do. Also on this console, we got the classic NES series, a budget re-release of some of the best NES games, including Zelda 1 and 2. Now these aren't perfect releases, they are compromised in some ways, but god damn do I not care. This is fantastic. 2 iconic NES games playable portably for the first time ever. They are still Zelda 1 and 2, and that brings the Game Boy Advanced games up to 5, the same as the Super Nintendo. But we're not even counting the fact that the GBA is backwards compatible with all of the previous Game Boy and Game Boy Color games, as long as you're not on a Game Boy Micro. Meaning, we could play both versions of Link's Awakening and both Oracle games on the GBA. So, that makes the GBA our new leader with 9 playable Zelda games, which is amazing. 9 great Zelda games. The GameCube is great, and great for Zelda. Original games wise, right off the bat, the GameCube knocks it out of the park with The Wind Waker. An initially polarizing game to some, but it's fantastic, and a great way to kick off the GameCube Zelda life. Now, if you pre-ordered The Wind Waker from some places, with it you got The Legend of Zelda, Ocarina of Time, and Ocarina of Time Master Quest disc for free. Without question, the best pre-order bonus of all time. It's great. Like literally fantastic. Now, we are going to be putting another big asterisk on the GameCube lineup already, because I consider Master Quest to be its own thing. And I'd say there's enough difference with this version to say that it's its own thing. But I definitely can see how some people might consider this not its own game, and so it has asterisks if you want. But I still think Master Quest is different enough to warrant being its own thing. Now, also on the GameCube, we have the Zelda Collector's Edition, which is a great re-release of Zelda 1, 2, Ocarina of Time, and Majora's Mask. 4 amazing games, and why does it not have Link to the Past? It's a strange omission, but this collection has 4 great games on it, as well as cool extra goodies like a 20-minute playable demo of The Wind Waker and a retrospective video. This is a great release, even if it feels weird not having Link to the Past, but it does add another 3 games onto this console that we didn't already have access to. We also have a spin-off title, Four Swords Adventures, another multiplayer Zelda game that can be played by linking the GBA to the GameCube, and it's really cool. I own it, but I don't have any way to play it the way it was intended, and it can be played in single player, but that's not how it was meant to be. Still, it's a quality time and another tally on the list. Rounding off the disc games on this system is Twilight Princess, another fan favorite, and one I just couldn't get into. I don't know. I'm definitely excited to replay this game as an adult to see why I didn't like it as a kid, but that is all for the Zelda games playable on GameCube natively. We have 8 games, and that's awesome, but we're not done yet. Released for the GameCube was an attachment known as the Game Boy Player, an adapter that let you play Game Boy Color, and Game Boy Advance games on the system, meaning we can bring over most of those games to the count. Link's Awakening, Link's Awakening DX, Oracle of Ages, and Oracle of Seasons, plus Minish Cap, Link to the Past, plus Four Swords, and the classic NES games, which we aren't counting because Zelda 1 and 2 are already playable on GameCube in the Zelda's Collector's Edition. But that still means the total goes up from 8 to 15 Zelda games playable on one system. That is insane, and also awesome. The GameCube has every single Zelda game that was currently released at the time, except for the Satellaview games available to play on it. And that's crazy. And it is firmly in the lead by a wide margin. The GBA is still a great platform for Zelda games, but if you don't really care for the modern Zelda stuff, definitely check out the GameCube library. It still holds up insanely well to this day. This part is going to be a little weird to categorize. Let me explain. So the DS had 3 revisions throughout its life. We have the original, the Lite, the DSi, and the DSi XL. The DS and DS Lite had GBA backwards compatibility, while the DSi's didn't. The DSi had a shop that had 2 exclusive Zelda games on it. So when counting these, we are going to be counting the DS and DSi separately in the overall chart. I do not, however, consider these different consoles overall. They are still part of the same product line, and the exclusive games on the DSi don't really warrant considering it its own thing. It's just a different upgrade with different compatibility. But categorizing it on this list this way, this is still something we'll have to live with. So starting off on the DS, we have 5 DS cartridge games, and they are all super different compared to the other games in this franchise. First, we have The Legend of Zelda Phantom Hourglass, a sequel to The Wind Waker that is controlled via the touchscreen, which is weird. I haven't played much of any of these DS games, if I played them at all, but so I'm not going to be able to talk about them that much. Here in the editing, I realized I didn't even mention that there's another DS cartridge game. The Spirit Tracks. The train one. That's also a game on the DS, so, yeah. After that, we have the Tingle games. Exclusive to Japan and Europe, we have 3 games. Tingle's Freshly Picked Rosy Rupee Land, Tingle's Balloon Fight, and Ripened Tingle's Balloon Trip of Love, which is a Japanese exclusive. Man, these games are weird. Like, really weird. I haven't played any of them, but I definitely plan on it. Now, the DS is backwards compatible with the GBA, so we can add that entire console Zelda library to this one, except for the regular Game Boy and the Game Boy Color games. You cannot play those on a DS, sadly. So we only bring over the Minish Cap, Zelda 1, Zelda 2, A Link to the Past, plus 4 Swords, bringing the DS up to 10 games, which is still more than the GBA, but I think the selection of games on there was better, with more core Zelda titles and the Oracle games on the Game Boy. Now the DSi. This is a weird one. So all of the DS games work on this system, giving us instantly 5. But you can't play the GBA games. But the DSi had the DSi shop, and on there were some Zelda games. So for Zelda's 25th anniversary, we got a full remaster of 4 Swords with the 4 Swords Anniversary Edition. And it has some extra content, but is by and large the same game. And then, this is another asterisk game, the Too Much Tingle Pack. It was a Japanese-only DSiWare application that had a bunch of junk, but it had a coin-flipping minigame, making it technically a game, maybe. I'm gonna count it because I think it's funny, but it's going to be an asterisk game because I get why you might not consider this a game. With that, we have 7 games on this handheld. Of the 2, I would definitely recommend playing Zelda games on a DS, but I still think the GBA has an overall better game selection. The Wii, my first ever game console, and on it I experienced pretty much all of the classic games I grew up with. Smash Bros. 64, my GameCube games, Super Mario World, and of course some Zelda stuff too. Mostly the re-release of Ocarina of Time on the Virtual Console. But let's start with the new games on Wii. Native to the console, we have at launch Twilight Princess, which is entirely the same game from the GameCube, but in case you didn't know, it's just mirrored the whole way so that Link would be right-handed. And then we have Skyward Sword, and that's it for new mainline Zelda games on the console. We also have the Skyward Sword update channel, but that's not a game, and it was only released to fix a game-breaking bug. But we do have one more original Zelda game on Wii, and that is of course the darkest, most gritty, most hardcore Zelda game of all time. Link's Crossbow Training. Released alongside the Wii Zapper, Link's Crossbow Training is a good game. It's got different modes, all high score based, and it's fun. What else do you want me to say? It's Link's Crossbow Training. So with that, we only have 3 games playable on a Wii disc. But alongside the Wii launched with the Wii Shop channel. That was a lot of Wii's in that sentence. The Wii Shop channel was a digital storefront full of classic games and some new ones, all downloadable through the internet. And on this, we got re-releases of Zelda 1, 2, A Link to the Past, Ocarina of Time, and Majora's Mask. 5 games. The Wii Virtual Console was how I played Ocarina of Time for the first time as a kid, and it will always hold a special place in my heart because of that. Now, it's not that many games, but it's still a killer lineup. Now, I know the Wii Shop channel is offline now, so you can't get those Virtual Console games anymore, but still. Now, on the Wii, we do have backwards compatibility with the GameCubes. Not on all Wii models. The Wii Mini and the second version of the Wii had this ability taken away, so keep that in mind. With the backwards compatibility with GameCube, we could bring over Anniversary Collection, the Ocarina of Time, Master Quest version, Wind Waker, and GameCube Twilight Princess, and 4 Swords Adventures. Since you can already play all of the Anniversary Collection games on Wii, we can't count those games. Same with Twilight Princess, but Master Quest, 4 Swords, and Wind Waker bring our total from a solid 8 games to a wonderful 11. Which is great, but not as great as the GameCube, simply for not having the Game Boy, Game Boy Color, or Game Boy Advance games because they were never playable on Wii. But Skyward Sword is one of my favorite games in the series, so I will give the Wii that. But still, the GameCube has a better overall lineup with more Zelda games, so it still reigns supreme. Let's see if the 3DS can take it down. Now, the 3DS is great. Probably my favorite console of all time. That's why I own 7. And it is a Zelda machine, with some of the best limited edition Zelda consoles. Look at all these. Oh, I want them all. Coming out near launch of the system, we've got Ocarina of Time 3D. A full remake of Ocarina of Time, and this game rocks. I may not be a big fan of the way it looks, but it is definitely the definitive edition of the game with new controls, some new content, but by and large it's the same great N64 game but playable on the go in a new form factor with better controls. Later, we also got A Link Between Worlds, a full sequel to A Link to the Past, and this game is also, pardon my French, fucking fantastic. With a really sick gimmick and great characters and just fun gameplay, another great game. Then we have Majora's Mask 3D, which is a more divisive port to the Ocarina of Time one. I definitely prefer the original over the 3DS game, but I can't lie and say that this still isn't Majora's Mask. It's a great game, playable on the 3DS. Now, we also have some Zelda spin-offs, those being Triforce Heroes, a new take on the multiplayer formula. I haven't played this game, so I can't talk about it, and Hyrule Warriors Legends, a port of the Wii U game with new content. I also haven't played this version of the game, but it looks fine. It looks like Hyrule Warriors playable on the 3DS, which is cool. I love Warriors games, so this is probably still a good time, but just play it on Wii U or Switch. So that's it for retail cartridge games on the 3DS, a solid 5. But I think they are way better than the 5 on the DS. But we're not done with the 3DS yet. The 3DS had a virtual console. But before we get to that, we need to talk about the 3DS Ambassador Program, which was a way for Nintendo to say sorry to the people who bought a 3DS before the price cut it received a few months after launch. And it was 20 virtual console titles, 10 NES games, and 10 GBA games. Now, the NES games all became available for purchase later on, but the GBA games were never made available to buy on 3DS. And one of those games was the Minish Cap. So we can technically play it on all 3DS systems, but the game was never available to the public at large. Okay, so with that out of the way, on the Virtual Console on 3DS, we got a re-released versions of Zelda 1 and 2 again, alongside the Game Boy and Game Boy Color games. More specifically, Link's Awakening DX and both Oracle games, which is how I first played them, and wow, fantastic ports of these old games. So that adds another 5 games. So now we're up to 11 counting the Minish Cap. But now here's where things get tricky, because of course they do. So on the 3DS, you could get 4 Swords Anniversary Edition, but it was only available for a limited time twice. But the 3DS got a console upgrade a few years down the line, the new 3DS line, which couldn't and could never get 4 Swords Anniversary Edition to my knowledge. But the new 3DS line had exclusive SNES Virtual Console games, meaning that you can only get A Link to the Past on new 3DS systems, and you cannot get 4 Swords Anniversary Edition on it. So that means that each is going to go into its own slot, like the DS and the DSi. But unlike those, they both have the same number of playable games so far, which means we have 18 on each. Because all 3DS systems are backwards compatible with the DS, meaning we can add the 3 Tingle games, the Too Much Tingle pack, and both Phantom Hourglass and Spirit Tracks to each counter, bringing the total for both up to 18 games. That is an incredible lineup. But at the time, the 3DS was probably the best place to go to play Zelda games. It had the 3D remakes and A Link Between Worlds, as well as the Game Boy Color games, NES and SNES games, plus the other spin-offs. But now you're probably still better off playing on the GameCube, because you can buy all the games on that platform. But the 3DS is going at the top of the list because it has the most, and probably the most overall good games. The system, when it was still alive, could play almost every single Zelda game ever released other than the Wind Waker, Twilight Princess, and Skyward Sword, and Link's Crossbow Training, which is definitely a deal breaker for some, but I don't think it takes away from the killer lineup that this system had. Alright, we are getting closer to the end now, and here we got the Wii U, Nintendo's worst performing system, but it had a lot of great games on it. So let's kick things off on Wii U with the disc games. We have Wind Waker HD, a beautiful port of Wind Waker on GameCube, and in my opinion, an infinitely better game. Not that the other version was bad, far from it, but I much prefer this port for a number of reasons. Then we have Hyrule Warriors. I love this game. So much content, and I absolutely love it to death. Then we have the Twilight Princess HD port, another fantastic game, but definitely the best Zelda game on Wii U would have to be Breath of the Wild. An absolutely killer experience. It's how I first played the game in 2017 and beat it, because I didn't get my Switch till that Christmas, and it's a near perfect game. And definitely the best final big game any console has ever gotten, in my opinion. The Wii U disc games are all rock solid, and overall way better than the Wii's. But we also have Virtual Console on here. So, released on it, we have Zelda 1, 2, Link to the Past, Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask, and the Minish Cap. You see, we got GBA games on the Wii U, and not on the 3DS for some reason, which is weird in hindsight. Like, I'm glad I can play these portable games on a home console, but it's weird that it's not also on the portable for purchase. But other than the GBA, we also got DS games on the system, and with it we got both Phantom Hourglass and Spirit Tracks, which is crazy being seen playing on a Wii U. This is a solid lineup of games, but the Virtual Console offerings on Wii U are definitely worse than on 3DS in my opinion, mostly due to the Game Boy Color games being on the 3DS, which we don't have on Wii U. But this is still a rock solid lineup through and through. The port of Ocarina of Time on Wii U is how I first beat the game by myself, and I am proud to admit that. With all of these games, we are up to 12. Now, also on the Virtual Console, on the Wii U, you could buy Wii games. The only Zelda game you could buy, however, was Skyward Sword, so that brings us up to 13. Now, with that being said, however, we can also play the disc version of the game as well as all other Wii discs. So, we can add another 2 to the Wii U's lineup, with Twilight Princess and also Link's Crossbow Training, bringing us to 15 games. Again, I think the differences between Twilight Princess HD and Twilight Princess on the Wii to be different enough to warrant both being on this list separately, but I'll put an asterisk next to it just in case. Now, the Wii U had a really solid lineup, much better than the Wii's, but I am shocked to say that the 3DS is still in the lead with 18 playable Zelda games. But before we move on, I need to talk about something I just discovered. So you all know the Game & Watch line, right? Well, there was a dual-screen Game & Watch system called the Zelda Game & Watch. And it was a simple LCD handheld Zelda game. But here's the kicker! It was re-released on GBA in the Game & Watch Gallery 4 game, unlockable in there. By the way, for all my European viewers, the game is called Game & Watch Gallery Advanced over there, as well as in Australia. Why do we bring this up? Because Game & Watch Gallery 4 was re-released on Wii U Virtual Console, meaning, technically, there's another Zelda game on Wii U, GBA, DS, and GameCube. But I understand why some of you wouldn't count it, but I fucking will! So I'm adding another game to each console's tally, and another asterisk to each. That leaves the Wii U with a total of 16 games. The Nintendo Switch. Okay, so kicking things off with cartridge games, we have, of course, Breath of the Wild. Great game. Switch port is better than the Wii U game. Then we have Link's Awakening Switch. It doesn't have a title, but it's a remake of Link's Awakening, so I'm just going to call it like Link's Awakening HD or something in the overall list. And still a fantastic game. It's the same fantastic game, just made better on Switch. Then we have K-Dance of Hyrule Crypt of the Necrodancer, a spin-off game of both Crypt of the Necrodancer and Zelda, where you kill enemies and move to the beat of classic Zelda bops, and it's really fun. Then we have Hyrule Warriors Definitive Edition. It combines the 3DS and Wii U games into one, and it's amazing. Definitely the best version of Hyrule Warriors. We also have Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity. I haven't played this one yet, but it looks good. Then we have Skyward Sword HD, which is great. It's the best way to play Skyward Sword. I got it for my 17th birthday and played the shit out of it, and it easily became one of my favorite Zelda games ever. Then we have Breath of the Wild's sequel, Tears of the Kingdom. A fantastic follow-up and better in almost every way. I still think I prefer Breath of the Wild. I believe it's the better experience, while Tears of the Kingdom is a better game. And the last cartridge game on Switch is The Legend of Zelda: Echoes of Wisdom. A fantastic reimagining of a 2D Zelda game, taking the great core and adding more puzzle elements, and kind of turning it into a strategy game in a way. It's amazing. I haven't beaten it yet, but I put it the day it came out, and oh my goodness, it might be my favorite 2D game in the series. And that's not even to mention that you get to play as Zelda in this one. Okay, so yeah, the Switch's physical cartridge games are amazing, and we have 8 of them. Now, the Switch is not backwards compatible with the Wii U or 3DS, so their entire libraries are off limits, unfortunately. But we do have digital downloads of classic games via the Nintendo Switch Online Plus Expansion Pass. We get N64, Game Boy, Game Boy Color, Game Boy Advance, NES, and Super NES. And Sega Genesis games, but we don't need those. The Genesis one does have Sonic 2, and that's a good game, but this is a Zelda video. So on NSO, we have Zelda 1, 2, Link to the Past, Four Swords, Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask, Link's Awakening DX, Minish Cap, and both Oracle games, bringing us up to 18 Zelda games, tied with the 3DS. Bringing us up to 18 games, tied with the 3DS and new 3DS. Now, the Switch is lacking in a lot of great Zelda titles. Wind Waker, Twilight Princess, all of the DS and 3DS games, but it's still got a really great lineup, sure to make both classic and modern fans happy. But it does suck that we are missing so many good games on Switch. But the amount of brand new ones on this console is more than any other Nintendo console has ever gotten, most likely due to how well Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom sold. I am hopefully optimistic that with the Switch successor on the horizon that we will get remakes or ports of the Wii U HD games, 3DS games, and even the DS games, but we'll have to wait and see. But we're not done yet. We need to list the consoles, and I made a graph. And then, I want to give my opinion on what the best console to play Zelda games on is. Alright, so let's list the consoles and games. In last place, we have the Virtual Boy, with 0 games. There you go, I can now cross-mention the Virtual Boy off my bingo card for 2025. Next, we have the NES, Game Boy, and N64 games, each with only 2 games released. The NES has The Legend of Zelda and Zelda 2: The Adventure of Link. The Game Boy has Link's Awakening and Link's Awakening DX, while the N64 has both Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask. After that, of course, we move up to the Philips CDI with 3 games. What did you take me for, some kind of freak who wouldn't mention the CDI? The CDI has 3 Zelda games, Link and the Faces of Evil, Zelda the Wand of Gamelon, and Zelda's Adventure, and I don't even need to talk about these games, you already know that they're bad. Next, we have the Game Boy Color with 4 games, Link's Awakening, Link's Awakening DX, Oracle of Ages, and Oracle of Seasons. Then, it's the SNES with 5 games, A Link to the Past, Link's Awakening, and Link's Awakening DX, also BS The Legend of Zelda, The Ancient Stone Tablets, and BS The Legend of Zelda. After the SNES, it's the DSi with a total of 7 games, Phantom Hourglass, Spirit Tracks, Tingle's Freshly Picked Rosy Rupee Land, Ripe Tingle's Balloon Trip of Love, Tingle's Balloon Fight, Too Much Tingle, Pah! And Four Swords Anniversary Edition. Then it's the GBA, with 10 games, A Link to the Past, Four Swords, Legend of Zelda, Zelda 2 Adventure of Link, Link's Awakening DX, Link's Awakening, Oracle of Ages, Oracle of Seasons, and Zelda Game & Watch. Then it's the DS with 11 games, Phantom Hourglass, Spirit Tracks, Tingle's Freshly Picked Rosy Rupee Land, Ripe Tingle's Balloon Trip of Love, Tingle's Balloon Fight, Minish Cap, Link to the Past, Four Swords, Legend of Zelda, Zelda 2: The Adventure of Link, and the Zelda Game & Watch. And the Wii Also with 11 games: Twilight Princess, Link's Crossbow Training, Skyward Sword, Legend of Zelda, Zelda 2: The Adventure of Link, A Link to the Past, Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask, Wind Waker, Ocarina of Time Master Quest, and Four Swords Adventures. Now is when things get interesting. After the Wii comes the GameCube and the Wii U, both with 16 games. First, the GameCube with Wind Waker, Four Swords Adventures, Twilight Princess, Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask, The Legend of Zelda, Zelda 2: The Adventure of Link, Minish Cap, Link to the Past, Four Swords, Ocarina of Time Master Quest, Link's Awakening, Link's Awakening DX, Oracle of Ages, Oracle of Seasons, and the Zelda Game & Watch. And then we have the Wii U with Wind Waker HD, Twilight Princess HD, Hyrule Warriors, Breath of the Wild, The Legend of Zelda, Zelda 2: The Adventure of Link, A Link to the Past, Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask, Minish Cap, Phantom Hourglass, Spirit Tracks, Skyward Sword, Twilight Princess Wii, Link's Crossbow Training, and the Zelda Game & Watch. And tied for first in the amount of games is the 3DS, new 3DS, and of course, the Switch. The 3DS has Ocarina of Time 3D, Majora's Mask 3D, A Link Between Worlds, Hyrule Warriors Legends, Triforce Heroes, The Legend of Zelda, Zelda 2: The Adventure of Link, Minish Cap, Link's Awakening DX, Oracle of Ages, Oracle of Seasons, Too Much Tingle Pack, Four Swords Anniversary Edition, Phantom Hourglass, Spirit Tracks, Tingle's Freshly Picked Rosy Rupee Land, Ripe Tingle's Balloon Trip of Love, and Tingle's Balloon Fight. While the new 3DS, you just replace Four Swords Anniversary Edition with A Link to the Past. And lastly, the Switch's library is this: Breath of the Wild, Cadence of Hyrule, Hyrule Warriors Definitive Edition, Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity, Tears of the Kingdom, Link's Awakening HD, Echoes of Wisdom, Skyward Sword HD, The Legend of Zelda, Zelda 2: The Adventure of Link, A Link to the Past, Link's Awakening DX, Oracle of Ages, Oracle of Seasons, Minish Cap, Four Swords, Ocarina of Time, and Majora's Mask. Damn, that's a lot of games. Now, let's discuss what console I think is overall the best to play Zelda games on. The best to play Zelda games on if all platform stores were active. I think it all depends on what kind of Zelda games you like. If you're a classic fan and don't really care about anything that came after Ocarina of Time or Majora's Mask, then the GameCube is the platform for you. I personally think it might have the most consistently solid lineup of Zelda games. 1, 2, Ocarina of Time, Ocarina of Time Master Quest, Majora's Mask, Wind Waker, Twilight Princess are all phenomenal games. And with others like the Game Boy Color games, Game Boy Advance games, all part of that lineup, adding up to be the best core lineup of Zelda games on any system, in my opinion. I don't think a single game here misses. Some might be worse or less loved than others, but they all bring unique style and a unique atmosphere, and each one is, again, just really solid. But I'd have to give it to the Switch. Now, I think I prefer more of the 3DS games to the Switch ones, specifically Link Between Worlds and the N64 remakes. But there are a lot worse games on 3DS than on GameCube and Switch. I haven't played Triforce Heroes, but people seem not to like it, and the DS entries are unique, but also not looked back on as fondly for a number of reasons. But the Virtual Console games on 3DS are amazing, but they're all now available on Switch. The Nintendo Switch has pretty much every main Zelda game the average consumer would want, and while it is lame it doesn't have Twilight Princess, Wind Waker, Link Between Worlds, the 3D and 64 games, it has Skyward Sword, Link's Awakening, all of the Game Boy Color and Game Boy Advance games, NES games, Super Nintendo games, and of course Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. All great games, and you add the spin-offs and other stuff on top of that, and it's a no-brainer. What else makes it a no-brainer is that the Wii, the Wii U, the DSi, and the 3DS eShops are all gone now, sadly. Subtracting all the games you can't buy on each of these platforms, they look like this. A huge chunk of those libraries are gone now, except for the Wii's. The only game you can't play natively off a disc on that console is A Link to the Past, which is a great game. But if you only have a Wii, then you still get a stellar library. But on these other consoles, yes, you still have great games on 3DS, but so much of the classic Zelda you still have a lot of great games on 3DS and Wii U, but with so much of the classic Zelda library gone, the Switch is the best platform overall for most of these games. If you're a Zelda fan and you want to play all these games through official means, I would recommend a Wii U, a 3DS, and a Switch. Even without the eShops on 3DS and Wii U available to you, with these three consoles, you'd get nearly all of the Zelda games you want to play on cart or disc. But if you don't really care about the modern titles like Breath of the Wild, then just get a GameCube. You have access to the entire Zelda game history from the end of 2006 to 1987, and all of the games on that console are amazing. So overall, I would recommend a Switch for your Zelda game needs and a 3DS and Wii U on standby, but mostly just the Switch. But the Switch doesn't have the too much tingle pack.
No!